So I'd like to welcome everybody today to the spring edition of our quarterly updates here at ICC. I'm Barbara Foster. I'm going to be the presenter for the day. We have a few technical difficulties, so if someone can put into the question and answer, just say that you can hear me and see the screen. That would be good for us to be able to confirm that. So just make sure that you're seeing things correctly. And Pamela, if you see any indications that people are having problems, please let me know. Just before we get started, I want to tell a little bit about ICC, our company that's hosting this presentation. We are a full-service supplier of materials for those of us who are involved in transportation of hazardous materials or dangerous goods. We've got a full line of class labels, as well as handling labels, packaging for hazmat, placards, publications related to either transport of hazardous materials or the hazard communication standards. If we don't have it in stock, we can usually source it for you, and we also have our custom printing. So if you got a print job that needs something a little bit different, just let us know, and we should be able to print it for you as well. So please don't forget, we don't just do these presentations. We do have all sorts of materials that you can that you can use to improve your hazmat shipping potential. My name again is Barbara Foster. I've been with ICC for pretty well my full working life, 35 years now, dealing with the hazmat or dangerous goods regulations for transportation, and also the hazard communication standards in the US. That's the OSHA hazmat or hazardous materials communication standard, and in Canada that is the WMAS system. Looks like some of you have figured out the Q&A system already, but if you're new to the Teams version of the webinar, just look for the section that is headed the live event Q&A. Click on it and you'll have a pane at the bottom if you can put in your question. Now, because this is a fairly large group, we can't answer the questions right away, but our moderators will list them. If they can be answered right away, they will answer you themselves, and if not, we'll do a full session at the end of the presentation where we go over the questions and try and find you the answers to them. I can't guarantee I can answer all of them, but at least hopefully I can point you out in the direction you need to go to look for the answer. So today we have a relatively full schedule, starting off with the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Pipelines and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. So we'll look at some updates with those. Then we'll look at the U.S. Postal System. They just passed a new final rule regarding what they call Publication 52, their rules for shipping hazardous materials by U.S. Post. Then we'll look at the Canadian Transportation of Dangerous Goods regulations and what's going on at Transport Canada. Take a look at anything interesting in the international regulations, and a very quick section on the OSHA and Health Canada updates to the hazard communication section. And we asked people a while back, if they had anything that they would like us to go into more detail or new topics to add. And one that came up that I just wanted to mention was the sodium ion batteries. So I thought people had a lot of questions about these, and I thought I'd try and do a little bit of a deeper dive looking at all the various regulations. And if you are going to be dealing with these new technology batteries, how the different regulations deal with them. So, number one, U.S. Department of Transportation and PHMSA. Well, got a new Secretary of Transportation. His name is Sean Duffy. As always, when there's a new administration, there's usually a moratorium period on coming up with new proposals, although things that are already in the works can proceed. So we probably will not see a lot of new things for a little bit. That's standard whenever there's a new administration. There also has been a couple of new executive orders issued that may have an impact on regulatory development. One is requiring a cost-benefit analysis to be run, even for regulations that are proposed not to meet what was the normal economic threshold of having a cost of $200 million or more. So lower cost regulations will still have to go through this cost-benefit analysis. And as a general rule, the new administration wants what they call a 10-to-1 offset, that to bring in one new regulation, they want 10 old or obsolete ones to be eliminated. Down the previous Trump administration, that was a 2-to-1 offset, but this is going to be a little bit more ambitious, getting rid of 10 regulations for any new ones that are being brought in. So this will have certainly a slowing effect on some of the development that was coming along. One thing that just came out at the very end of last year, December 31st, was the DOT increase in civil fines for 2025. Now, on a yearly basis, the civil fines defined in 49 CFR will be increased by basic cost of living. So they will be adjusted as inflation adjusts. So here's just some of the increases that you'll see. A general maximum penalty under PHMSA for violation of a hazardous materials transportation law has been increased from $99,000 and something up to $200,000. Again, for more serious incidents where there has been death, serious illness, severe injury, or substantial property damage, it's gone from $232,000 to $238,000. The training minimum penalty, there's not a maximum, this is a minimum, has gone from 101 to 117. Now you might think, well, that's kind of trivial, but remember, this would not be like for a company where everybody's not trained. They're not going to be giving you $600 fine for that. They are going to be assessing this per employee and possibly per day that each employee is doing a hazmat function. So this would be a very granular amount that would have to be multiplied by the employees by the number of hazmat functions they've done or the days that they've been active. Maximum penalties, again, are the same as the general ones for violating hazmat transportation law, going from $99,000 up to $202,000. Then the individual departments will have their own penalties, such as the Federal Motor Carriers Safety Administration. Again, they have our basic $99,000 up to $102,000 per violation, and more serious penalties, again, more serious fines there. The Federal Railway Administration minimum rail safety penalty was last year 1,086, goes up to 1,114. Ordinary maximum rail safety penalties from 35,500 up to 36,500 approximately, and so forth. And again, our maximums based on the civil are the same as the general DOT ones. FAA, and so the FAA, and this is FAA and also pipelines. So again, as you can see, maximum penalties, we are normally going to be up over $100,000 for the maximum penalty for the first time. So just keep that in mind, that it is still important that we comply with the hazmat regulations. One thing that always comes up really at the start of each UN cycle is the fact that the US regulations are based on the UN recommendations on the transport of dangerous goods, and they get updated on a fixed 2-year cycle. The US regulations and also Canadian regulations do not follow a fixed cycle. As I've just mentioned in previous slides, a new administration can slow things down as they sort of reorganize and try and figure out what their priorities are for the next 4 years. So PHMSA has usually taken the approach that when there's a new cycle and the international air and ocean regulations will be updated, PHMSA has to do something to allow shipments by air and ocean to follow the new rules. Otherwise, it could become extremely difficult. Last December, PHMSA issued what they call a Notice of Enforcement Policy. And we've got a link to it if you want to take a look at it. But it's talking about using the 2025-2026 editions of, for air, the ICAO technical instructions. And of course, as a practical matter, most people don't use ICAO. They work from the IATA Dangerous Goods regulations, but it is based on the ICAO technical instructions. And if you're going internationally by marine, we've got the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code. So, for example, they have new things such as the entries for sodium-ion batteries in those documents. And this Notice of Enforcement Policy will basically allow you to use those for shipments by air and internationally by ocean. The letter says they will continue to evaluate whether to include updates corresponding to the changes into future amendments to 49 CFR. Again, some of these will probably be rubber stamped. They did have that they were doing some studies on the sodium-ion batteries to determine that the UN system for these would be considered safe in the United States. So there is actually some work just to verify that if the change is not safe, it would not be authorized in the United States in future. But they will not take enforcement action against offerers of hazmat or carriers of hazmat who use the new descriptions in the 2025 to 2026 international regulations for shipments leaving or entering the United States or being transported domestically according to the ICAO technical instructions. Now, keep in mind that this is ICAO and the IMDG code. It does not apply to road and rail. So that is something that, you know, maybe if you were coming across a serious issue, for example, you did want to get into shipping sodium-ion batteries, but you wanted to ship them domestically by highway or rail, you may be able to get a permit to allow you to use the new descriptions until PHMSA has officially recognized them for all modes. For those of you in the trucking industry, in the United States, there is a new bill that just became law December 23rd, the Transportation Security Screening Modernization Act. And that is designed to cut redundancy or overlap between the Transportation Worker Identification Credential, or TWIC card, and the Hazardous Materials Endorsement, HME programs for basically security background checks for people who are getting involved in transporting hazardous materials. Previously, these were two separate programs. So if you wanted to be involved in both of them, you would have to make two applications, go through two in-person appointments and interviews to get two cards that basically say you have passed the background security checks and are okay to carry hazardous materials. So what they're going to do is allow you to just make one application, pay one fee, do one appointment, and you'll be approved for both of them. Next, we have the U.S. Postal Service. USPS has its own publication on rules for carrying hazardous materials. Now, they can't allow you to break 49 CFR, but they could have additional requirements for hazmat going by mail. Some they may not accept at all, others they might have extra requirements. So this document that covers these is called Publication 52. And they last year I was doing this presentation, I was talking about them having a proposed rulemaking on this. Well, the proposed rulemaking has gone through, and we now have a final rule published in the Federal Register on January 27th of this year. Some of the, or before we get there, it will become effective on January 27th. Some of the significant things you'll find in this rule: if you are posting hazmat, there will be a requirement that outer packaging must be a certain berth strength or pass an edge crush test. These are two equivalent ways of verifying how strong your box is. So if your hazmat package will be 20 pounds or less, if you do the burst test, it must survive at least 200 pounds, or it must survive a 32 edge crush test minimum. Over 20 pounds per package, your box must be burst tested to 270 pounds, 75 pounds, or pass an 80 or 44 edge crush test at minimum to be acceptable for heavier amounts of hazmat. If you're shipping equipment with lithium batteries installed, so something like, for example, a computer, a cell phone, electronic watch, GPS or something, they did say these could be shipped in padded or polyethylene bags, but the inner containers must be able to pass a 1.2 meter drop test without damage to the batteries. Now, in the proposed rule, that was 1.7 meters, but apparently they got talked down a little bit to 1.2 meters. And if you're shipping what they call other non-regulated toxic materials, for example, you might have a consumer pesticide that does not meet the requirements of being classed as 6.1 toxic for transportation. It could be, just something that you don't want people to swallow. It could be an irritant or whatever. For these, there are some basic rules. But the new rule says that shippers may use rigid outer packagings with the same edge crush test requirements as for hazmat. So you could have, say, a insecticide that was not a poison officially for transporting dangerous goods, but you would have to use a package that passes the same basic strength testing as required for this rule, even if it doesn't have to be a UN specification packaging. So remember, of course, this is just if you're mailing these products. It would not apply to non-mail related transport. So the packaging must be able to withstand normal transit and handling that you anticipate during a mail shipment. And there are special rules in publication 52 for liquids. Section 451.3a We'll talk about that. So if you're shipping a liquid that qualifies as a non-regulated toxic material, you would still have to meet these requirements for liquid hazmat in order to be able to mail them. So that is what's going on in the US. Canada is also kind of in a state of flux as we anticipate there may be a federal election sometime probably earlier rather than later. So currently the Minister of Transportation is a lady named Anita Anand. Again, not probably too much likely to come out as a final rule in the immediate future because of the upcoming federal election. Something that I found rather interesting is apparently Transport Canada is planning on reworking the way the organization is arranged, particularly with regards to the Dangerous Goods Directorate. And according to a recent presentation, they say they have lots of work ongoing, although they didn't go into a lot of detail about what this work was actually going to address. These are just some other staff. If you're looking for people to contact, these are the people head of various branches in Transport Canada. You notice that they are all acting directors because Transport Canada's fiscal year starts April 1st, and people will be made more final likely after that date. Right now, everyone is in an acting position as they await their reorganization. So their reorganization or restructuring is intended to improve oversight and streamline core functions, and to improve coordination with the mode-specific dangerous goods oversight. So right now, you've got, if you look at Transport Canada, there's a road directorate, rail, air, marine, and then dangerous goods. And the idea would be to split off dangerous goods into modal sections. So there'd be, under road, there would be a dangerous goods group, and under air there would be a dangerous goods group, and they're hoping this would make it more relatable to the individual modes. However, they will still have what they call a hub of basic dangerous goods responsibilities, but more responsibilities to be divided up among the modal departments. So road and so forth would likely fall under the Road Safety Administration. A couple of things. Last I heard, they were still debating where the Emergency Response Assistance Plan program would go. Now, this is a unique requirement in Canada. For those of you in the United States, there is no equivalent in other countries, but it is a requirement that if you're shipping certain high-risk dangerous goods, you have to have your own mobile emergency response crew that you could send out in order to assist local responders. And they still feel this is very important. They're not going to get rid of it, but apparently there was some debate over where it was going to go. If you're applying for permits, or what Transport Canada calls equivalency certificates, or if you're looking into the engineering section for packaging, or as Transport Canada likes to call it, means of containment. So apparently packaging is too short and easy to say. Those would be things that would likely remain in the hub. And I say the goal for this is to at least get it started on April 1st, start of the Transport Canada's new year. Although, again, with a federal election, even if the overall governing party doesn't change, there is likely to be a pause for reviewing what people are doing and seeing whether we want to keep going in the same direction or try something different. So this is something that is likely to be found in future, but again, might be with a different government person in charge of it, they might go in a different direction. A reminder for those of you shipping railway tank cars, the Canadian standard for railway tank cars, TP 14877, starting after the Lac-Mégantic disaster, planned to phase out using Class 111 tank cars, as well as enhanced versions of these tank cars from being used to transport Class 3 flammable liquids. Now, this is aimed primarily at Class 3, not all hazmat, but a legacy or enhanced Class 111 tank car will not be allowed to be used for flammable liquids as of May 1st of this year. And it applies to both the jacketed and unjacketed types of tank cars. Now, this has been in the works for a long time, but just a warning that the transition period is finally coming to an end, and people should have, if you use these type of tank cars for flammable liquids, you should have been working on developing or arranging for alternatives. Something that has been an issue the past couple of years is the Client Identification Database, or CID. This would involve companies in Canada who offer or handle or transport dangerous goods to register with Transport Canada. Now, unlike the registration requirements in the United States, there is not currently a fee for this. And it can all be done online, so it is a relatively low impact requirement, but it came out in October of 2023. You had a 1-year transition period to October 2024, and as you've noticed, we are now in 2025, so everybody should have registered, which means, of course, a lot of people have not yet, but from what I've heard from some clients, that Transport Canada inspectors have told them when they came in that if you hadn't registered, they are now authorized to charge or lay fines for lack of registration. So the tolerance period has ended, and if you haven't registered already, now's the time to do so, so that you've got all your paperwork ready whenever the Transport Canada inspector shows up to do an inspection. Again, the access to the database and a lot of guidance materials can be found on Transport Canada's website. They've got pages specifically about this, as well as an online portal. And I've worked with people doing the registration. It's really relatively straightforward. You just have to basically tell them who you are, have a couple of people identified as contacts if they need to get in touch with you regarding anything, what your sites are, and tell them what classes you ship and what mode of transports or what modes of transport you use. Keep in mind that if you're shipping under any of the special cases, other than special case 1.16, you are exempted from having to register, but most people don't just ship limited quantities. They may ship a mixture of exempted materials and fully regulated. So any fully regulated, you need to get your registration done if you haven't done so already. Another thing, if you need some guidance, Transport Canada often gives nice little guidance pages on various topics. Oops. One that they've come out with recently is what to do if you break or spill a mercury thermometer. Now, mercury has been replaced in a lot of areas, but there still are mercury thermometers around. So you've got a small spill of mercury. Here's how you go about cleaning it up and disposing of the waste. One which I think has a little bit more impact on shippers of dangerous goods or hazmat to Canada is one about what they call the improper use of two shipping descriptions UN 1759, which is corrosive solid, not otherwise specified, and UN 1760, which is the equivalent corrosive liquid, not otherwise specified. Now, these shipping names are very old. They've been around pretty well since the UN system started, and they've always been a catch-all for corrosives that can't be put anywhere else. And they're still with us. They have not been eliminated, but Transport Canada said there have been new shipping names created over the years that will narrow the focus more. For example, names that will tell us not only it's corrosive and it's a liquid or a solid, but will tell us whether it's an acid or a base, which can be important for emergency responders to know, and whether they're acidic or they are organic or inorganic. And again, that has to deal with the chemical structure. Organic acids will be based on a carbon skeleton, whereas inorganic chemicals will not have this carbon chain skeleton. And say, well, why is that important? Organic chemicals can be absorbed into the body more easily. So if they're toxic, then they can have a toxic effect, which will be a much higher risk than an inorganic corrosive material. So this guidance is to try and help you decide which shipping name should you use, and to discourage people from just saying, okay, it's liquid, it's corrosive, therefore I'm just going to dump it into UN 1760. How to make the decision, how you can use more focused shipping descriptions that would be more helpful in emergency response. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you can't use these names if those more granular names don't work. So for example, let's say you had a corrosive mixture that was both organic and inorganic. Well, you can't use a name that just says organic or inorganic. In that case, maybe corrosive liquid NOS is the most appropriate name, but this guidance will be helpful. And keep in mind that will also apply for people shipping from the US into Canada, that you might sometimes have a Transport Canada question your descriptions if they don't feel that they are focused enough. Regulatory. Or international regulatory developments. Well, most of what we've talked about has been covered in previous sessions. The new ICAO and IATA regulations for air, changes to the IMDG code. But if you're dealing with European shipments in Europe itself, they have their own regulations for the EU. And one that's just come out is called the ADR. It isn't really a simple English acronym. It stands for the European Agreement Concerning the International Carriage of Dangerous Goods by Road within the European Union. So the 2025 to 2026 edition has been published, and the changes will reflect the most recent UN changes, such as they've incorporated new entries for sodium-ion batteries. They've updated the packing instructions to match what's going on at the UN, such as creating new packing instructions for sodium-ion batteries. They have provided exemptions for waste transported by private individuals, which apparently was an issue in Europe. Revised definitions for things like recycled plastics. The UN, I guess as part of an environmental initiative, has tried to encourage developing safe packaging for dangerous goods made of recycled plastics, which, again, there's been concern with. It may not be as safe as totally new plastics, but it would be much more environmentally friendly if we can use recycled plastics. Also, things for explosives or pyrotechnic effects and more. There was a number of issues such as new special provisions and bulk packaging for carriage of asbestos. So if you're into asbestos in Europe, these are some things to take a look at. OSHA and WMIS, things seem to have settled down pretty much since they've made the amendments in both the United States and Canada regarding incorporating new elements from the 7th revised edition of the GHS. But keep in mind that if you're in the United States, there are some implementation dates to keep in mind. This came effective July 19th last year. If you manufacture or sell a chemical substance, basically a pure chemical, your HazCom must be updated to the revised system by January 19th, 2026. So that'll give you a little less than a year. And then if you're making a product that is based on these pure chemicals, you're allowed to wait until you get the information from your chemical suppliers, but chemical mixtures, their HazCom must be in compliance with the new system by July 19th, 2027. So again, keep in mind that it's always a good idea to get this done earlier rather than later. But if you are dealing with a mixture and you can't get the updated information from your suppliers, you must be given it by at least January 19th of next year. After that, you have the right to start demanding that they provide you with things with the new classifications and new information on the safety data sheet and so forth. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was we did get some requests for a little bit more detail about sodium-ion batteries and how they are being brought in the new UN regulations and spreading through the other regulations. So first of all, what is a sodium-ion battery and why is this important? Well, they are relatively new technology. And unfortunately, you weren't really able to ship them without going through the system to get special permits until they had shipping descriptions that were in the relevant regulations. So the UN put them in place. Basically, they're considered to be similar to lithium-ion batteries. Sodium is in the same family, chemical family as lithium. They're quite a reactive chemical, but lithium has a downside that it is very difficult to extract. There's only a few places in the world where you can get lithium, and it's a very expensive material. So lithium-ion batteries, as everybody knows who buys things based on lithium-ion batteries, they can be quite expensive. Sodium is less costly, and it's much more readily available. You don't have the supply chain issues that there's only a few places where it's mined. It can be extracted from many locations. In fact, even there's technology to get it out of seawater if that was absolutely necessary. So, you know, political or things wouldn't be quite such an issue in interrupting the supply chain, as well as it's just basically lower priced. Now, the downside to a lithium-ion battery, they don't hold as much power. They do hold a significant amount, but not quite as much as a lithium-ion battery. And when they are being recharged, they tend to have a shorter lifespan, so they would have to be disposed of more frequently. So they wouldn't be quite as long-lasting as a lithium-ion battery. So, for example, if you had a laptop powered on sodium-ion batteries, you would probably have to get new batteries more frequently. The upsides, they are cheaper. Used batteries are easier to recycle, and they are, well, they're still not a zero fire hazard. They are less likely to catch fire spontaneously compared to lithium-ion batteries. So there's a safety benefit to sodium-ion batteries as well. So while they can't completely replace lithium ion batteries, they will have their own purpose in life, where they would be preferable to use over a lithium-ion battery. So they were first brought in the UN model regulations in revision 23 for 2023, with new shipping descriptions to cover them. The IMDG code and the ICAO and IATA regulations for air implemented these for their 2025 editions. Keep in mind that the national authorities in North America, PHMSA in the United States and Transport Canada, have not yet officially put them in their regulations, but there are workarounds. As I mentioned earlier, PHMSA has issued they have issued their notification on enforcement that would apply to shipments going by air or internationally by ocean, where you can use shipping descriptions that are in ICAO or in the IMDG code. And in TDG, they're not yet incorporated, but there is a section in TDG, in the Transportation Dangerous Goods Regulations Canada, section 2.2 bracket 4, that says you are allowed to use shipping descriptions in the current UN recommendations or IMDG code or ICAO technical instructions if Transport Canada does not forbid them for transport. And there's not been anything I've heard about Transport Canada forbidding sodium-ion batteries, so presumably they could be used according to this section. Now, I haven't seen anything official for Transport Canada on this, but yeah, it appears to be fairly straightforward that this section would allow you to use a valid UN classification. So how does UN address sodium-ion batteries? Well, basically, they would be treated pretty much like lithium-ion batteries. There are 4 shipping descriptions. There's UN 3551, which is just standalone sodium-ion batteries. They're class 9, no packing group. UN 3552 can be used for either sodium-ion batteries contained in equipment or sodium-ion batteries packed in the same outer package with the equipment they're going to power, but not installed. That's just called packed in equipment. And then there's an entry for vehicles, sodium-ion battery powered, so they would be running on sodium-ion batteries as opposed to lithium-ion batteries. So very much similar to the way lithium-ion batteries are broken down. For low-powered sodium-ion batteries, they will again treat them very much like lithium-ion batteries, but they would allow to be shipped as low-powered if they're not over 20 watt-hours per individual cell. So if you had like a sodium-ion AA or AAA cell, it can be shipped as low-powered if it's not over 20 watt-hours. If you have battery packs or assemblies, they can go as low-powered if the total watt-hour rating is not over 100 watt-hours. Under the IMDG code, they refer you to the same exemption that's used by lithium-ion batteries, special provision 188. So that talks about shipping the low-powered lithium-ion batteries. It can also be used for sodium-ion batteries now. Under ICAO and IATA, the sodium-ion batteries have their own packing instructions, very similar to what you see for lithium-ion batteries. For example, a standalone sodium-ion battery should not have a state of charge during transport exceeding 30%. So you want to make sure that they're not fully charged when you ship them. And the hazard communication will basically boil down to the lithium-ion battery mark, or as they're now going to call them, sometimes, for example, IATA just calls them the battery mark, because it will cover both lithium and sodium-ion batteries. Anyway, so if you found this helpful, just keep in mind that ICC has a lot of resources for those in the hazmat or dangerous goods industries. If you go to our website, one of our sections is called the Help Center. We have now over 1,000 articles on our blog site talking about various topics, from new regulations that are coming in, specific types of products like lithium batteries or light bulbs or things like that, or topics of interest. I now and then like to get into the history of hazmat regulations and how they have developed over time. You can also look at, we'll have recordings of previous quarterly updates. In case people didn't notice, we are recording this, and you will get a link that you can review it or be able to share it with others in your company if you feel that that would be useful. And if you'd like to sign up, we have something called the Compliance Bulletin, where you can get notification of important regulatory changes in advance for free, sent directly to your inbox. So please take a look at this, and you may find it can help you a lot in dealing with your regulatory issues. So now we want to take a look at some of the questions that have come in. So we've got some new ones and some published ones. So let's just start with the new ones and then move to the published ones. So Bill says, data shows sodium-ion batteries last longer and take more charges than lithium batteries. Opposite. Okay. My understanding was that one downside were that they were a little less in the lifespan, but if there's new data that shows they're longer, that's another step. That's another thing that's in their favor. So I'll take a look at the data there. So Bill has mentioned some of the development on it. Says the product can have millions of cycles, whereas lithium ions would have 3,000 to 5,000, that is some order of magnitude. So that, thank you very much, Bill. I hadn't seen that research, but I really do appreciate it. So I will keep in mind that there may be more research necessary, but again, when they come out, their manufacturers should be able to tell you just how many recycling charges a particular battery will be able to survive. Then we've got some questions here. Number one, Anonymous says, under restructuring of the TDG Directorate, please clarify the comment about needing your own company staff to respond to emergencies. Okay, that was referring to a special Canadian requirement. Again, there is no direct equivalent of this in the United States or Europe, something called an Emergency Response Assistance Plan. And it doesn't apply to all dangerous goods in Canada. It only applies to certain listed high danger chemicals, such as chlorine gas, if they're being transported over a certain quantity. And the idea is if these things were involved in a major accident, people would need assistance from trained responders with the appropriate equipment. It's not something that, you know, an average small town fire department would be able to deal with. So if you're shipping over a certain amount of chlorine now in one container, you'll have to have this emergency response assistance plan to assist local responders set up. But again, it's not for all dangerous goods in Canada. And even if your product is listed, normally you have to be shipping it above a certain quantity, maybe 1,000 liters or 3,000 liters, before it becomes mandatory for you to have this ERAP. So hopefully that explains it a little bit more. Take a look at TDG sections, or part 7. It talks all about emergency response assistance plans. Then we got a question for David Cox. Good one. Says, will the UN numbers 1759 and 1760 be phased out in preference to the more detailed ones, such as corrosive liquid, acidic, organic, NOS? And I don't think they will, because there are some products that just cannot be put into the more specific entries. Again, it requires that you know whether the product is acidic or basic, and organic or inorganic. And you can very well have a corrosive that is a mixture of organic and inorganic materials, or might be corrosive, but not actually significantly acidic or basic. In that case, you're going to need that basic catch-all name like corrosive liquids NOS or corrosive solids NOS. But what they're trying to say is just don't go to that as your first choice. See whether any of the more detailed descriptions would be a better choice, and giving you guidance how to make that decision. But they're not going to get rid of those two UN numbers. There'll always be a need for them for the things that you just cannot categorize any further. They're just corrosives and they're liquids or they're solids, but you can't break it down any further. Okay, then we've got one that says, in previous webinars, it was mentioned that the telephone number will normally no longer be required on the lithium battery marks. Do you know if we still require the phone number on the lithium battery marks at this time? Okay, they are optional right now under the IMDG code and the IATA system. So if you're shipping under those regs, they make the telephone number optional. And I'm trying to remember what the US has done, but I believe that they will accept it, certainly under their notification of enforcement, they would accept it for air or ocean. And I think they've just made a change. I can't remember off the top of my head, but something's telling me that, yeah, they will accept the lithium battery mark without the telephone number in the United States. The holdout is Canada, which has not addressed this to any degree. So right now I'm recommending Canadian shippers who may ship by ground to keep the telephone number on, but be prepared to remove it because the UN has planned to get rid of it by 2027. And that's not leaving Canada an awful lot of time as wiggle room. So they're going to have to do something, or else lithium battery shipments are going to become very complicated because of whether or not you need this number on the mark. If the air regulations are saying you can't have it, and the ground regulations are saying you must have it, obviously that's going to be a problem. Something that I did forget to mention is there was a publication issue, or a notification issued by IATA telling people who are doing cargo acceptance, not to get too concerned about minutia. And I could see for something like that saying, well, a telephone number on the label really doesn't hurt. It's not making things less safe, but I would say there is a likelihood that when IATA says no more telephone number, you can get shipments refused if there is a telephone number on the label. So hopefully the national regulations will be updated. And I just can't remember what the US has done recently, but something is telling me that they did have some sort of provision that will allow you to leave the telephone number off the mark. Just Canada was kind of the holdout that hadn't addressed it yet. Then we've got, okay, more questions. Kelly says, considering the UN 1760, we've been using it when we have a mixture of both organic and inorganic chemicals in a manufacturing product. Would that be correct to use it still? Yes, it would. That would be perfectly correct to use it if it cannot be put into organic or inorganic, because it's got both, or it's neither acidic nor alkaline. So let's see whether we can get rid of some of these and get some new questions up. Do you have any details regarding updates to packaging requirements according to ADR for shipments within EU? And when would those changes become mandatory? Again, I don't have a lot of details on the ADR. Again, it would be, you'd have to look up your product and see whether there'd been any change to the packing instruction. And again, if you hadn't seen any changes to the instructions for IMDG or IATA, it would be likely there would be no relevant changes in the ADR. But again, it's something that you'd have to look up on a product by product basis to see what the changes would be. And again, if you're not selling into Europe, this is not really an issue, but it is an issue, obviously, if Europe is one of your markets. Okay, regarding USPS, is this lithium metal or lithium ion or both? Presumably that is. Let's see if we can get back there. Take a look at USPS. To my knowledge, it is both lithium metal and lithium ion installed in equipment, but again, I'd have to look, now that you've asked the question, I'd like to look at publication 52. Certainly don't rely on my memory, but to my knowledge, it would be for either lithium metal or lithium ion batteries. Both of them could use this bit of going in padded bags rather than necessarily in rigid boxes. So let's see, we could get a few more here. And some of these off here. Okay, so I think that's everything. If there's anybody I missed, please just give me, you can contact me after the class. If you do have anything you'd like to discuss in more detail, here's our contact information. We've got our 888 numbers for both US and Canada, and our website, www.thecompliancecenter.com. Please check us out, particularly our help center, which has lots and lots of information. And if you want to email me, it's barbarafoster@thecompliancecenter.com. So I'd like to thank everyone, and please have a pleasant rest of your week. And if ICC can assist you in future, please reach out and let us know.